Hey everyone, my name is Tegan and welcome back to TandeWrites, but today we are wrapping up my reading for the month of August. And forgive my framed puzzle in the background, I worked real hard on it and I think it needs to be displayed. And this month, in a shock twist of events, I have actually filled out my reading journal. I am, the background's the wrong colour for where I should be at this point in the year. But, I'm trying. And I would say that this was, a bad reading month, a good reading month. I read the exact same books as last month. I read 9 books again. I think my rating is a little bit lower, but I read the same amount. And here are the books I read this month. There are an above average amount of advanced copies here, but we'll get into that. As always, let's start by talking about some stats. My moods this month are pretty much the same as always. You've got mysterious, emotional, adventurous, dark. And there's one reflective in there. I'm not sure what the reflective book is, skimming over what I read this month, but pretty much I'm a creature of habit, as always. Now, my genres are a little bit more exciting than usual because, as always, young adult, horror, fantasy, LGBT are very high. But after that, everything else, I've just read one book for each category. So I read one speculative fiction, which, off the top of my head, I'm not sure what it was. One science fiction, which I believe was Into the Drowning Deep, which has sci-fi elements. We have one romance, not sure what that is. One mystery, one literary. I've read a bit more eclectically genreized this month, but as a whole, if you look at the list of books, it doesn't give that impression. And a bit more of an eclectic rating this month, where predominantly 3.5 stars I have read, and because I've read, I think a lot of the advanced copies I had this month I liked less than I was expecting, which is why it's a bit of an uneven spread, but there's a 2-star, it's a 2.5. I finally caved and gave a book a full 5 stars, and that was pure and easy because that is my favourite book of all time, and I reread it again via audiobook this month, and I still see no faults with it, so I thought, something has to have 5 stars, it will be this. So yeah, let's talk about some individual books. I'm going to do this how I used to based on format of BookBush, so there's kind of some categorisation here, and a bit less eclectic. We'll talk about the advanced copies at the end. So let's start with physical books. I read 2 physical books this month, neither of which were on my curated TBR for the year. The first one was the Raven Boys graphic novel, which of course I loved because I love the Raven Boys. This book, I never remember what the plot is or things that happen in it until I actually read it, and so much happens in this. There's so many events that in my head shouldn't happen till book 3, but the Noah reveal happens in this book, and in my head that is not in here. But Noah is my favourite character. I was sat here taking photos of him like this was a concert. Evidence on my Twitter. But there's this one little panel where I think they're walking into not Glendower. What are the woods called? What are the trees called? The trees are not called Glendower. They walk into the forest for the first time, and there's a panel of Blue and Noah holding hands as they're walking along, and that was my favourite friendship. I love Noah Cherney so much. And I really love the art style in this. I love that they've captured the quirkiness of Blue's little outfits. And they're all just so perfect. And I hope that this does carry out for all 4 of the books. I'm pretty sure The Dream Thieves is in progress, but I hope it goes on for all of the books. And the other physical book I read this month was Ethereal Drowning by Ava Reid, which I finished on August 31st, which was yesterday at time of filming. And I will say honestly, I've never been more underwhelmed with a sequel in my life. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed a lot about this book, but because I loved A Study in Drowning so much and I felt it worked as a standalone, that this book being so long, and in my opinion, nothing that caught my interest happened until the 75% mark. And I still have the same issues with this as I had with A Study in Drowning, predominantly the world building and the war being very surface level at best. And Ava Reid's definitely tried to make the war more impactful in this book by, mentioning it more than she did in Study in Drowning, but it still doesn't feel like enough. And this book made me realise how important the crumbling house into the sea, that setting was for my enjoyment of A Study in Drowning. Because the second you can take away a quirky setting in here, they're just in their university dorm rooms. I don't care. And this book has Preston's POV, which I enjoyed some of it. I enjoyed that Effie's journey on this book shows that grief and recovering from mental illness isn't linear. And there's, an event that happens around 75% of the way through the book, which makes limited sense to me, because we never really hear her perspective on it. But in summary, a book that exists. And then the audiobooks I've read this month, because I exclusively use audiobooks for rereading books, some of which are my favourite, some of which are just books I enjoyed that I'm going to have a good fun time rereading, because I'm not good at processing new information via my ears, so we reread. And the first book I reread this month was Piranesi, by Susanna Clarke, which is always going to be my favourite book of all time. I'm saving up for the Photo Society edition because I need every edition of this book. I have somewhere behind this trophy, I have the standard paperback. I want the hardcover. I want every edition of this book I can find. And I'm usually not someone who buys multiple editions of books. Sometimes, if I pre-order a book and then, the Owl Crate box turns up with the same book in, I'm fine having two. I no longer have a lot of books where I have two. Except Six of Crows, I have the paperback and I have the collector's edition. There's a Kay Ancrum book where I have Icarus and I have the Fancy Icarus. There's a couple of books where I have multiples. But Piranesi is the one where I'm going to go all out and collect every single edition I can find. I'm going to get all the foreign language editions. I'm getting that Photo Society edition. I'm getting whatever I can. And I don't think I've ever done a specific video on why I love Piranesi so much. It's come up a lot in end of year lists. And I think I did a video once about my Roman Empire reads, my favourite books of all time that I can't stop thinking about. But I've never done a full Piranesi review, and I don't think I need to. I think you need to read that book and find out for yourself why either you will hate it or you will love it. It's very polarising in that sense. But I loved it, and I will always love it so much. The next audiobook I read this month was We Were Lies by E. Lockhart, and this was a reread because I originally read the book many years ago now. But recently was it an Amazon series? The TV series came out and I watched it and I enjoyed it, but I remembered not liking the book. So I thought I'm going to go reread the book, and guess what? Still didn't like the book. And I think my main, issues with the book is kind of the pace and the order of events, because how it's been adapted for the screen works really well with flashback non-linear timelines. And just the order of how events play out in the book doesn't work for me. But I really enjoyed the TV series. And I love that, I cannot remember his name, but the guy who's playing Haymitch in Sunrise on the Reaping is in there. And I was watching his character, both his character and his name escapes me. But I was watching this guy and I thought, yes, that is the perfect Haymitch. It makes sense. And my final audiobook reread for the month was Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. Because, do I enjoy her books? Sometimes. Do they bring me a great sense of I wish I was 14 again? Yes. This was a nostalgia read. I think a lot of her books, I read them and I must near immediately reread them back when I was a preteen. But Clockwork, whatever, The Infernal Devices, is it called The Infernal Devices? That's a different one. It might be called The Infernal Devices. I've not reread these ones. But these seem to be the fan favourites. And the Tessa, Jem, Will love triangle that actually feels like a love triangle. Because Jem and Will love each other so much, it's not just a girl choosing between two boys, but that's not a love triangle. A love triangle, they all love each other. So I thought I'd reread this one just for some historical vibes as well, and it's still fun, I still enjoy it. It probably is Cassandra Clare's best works, because all the characters make sense, everyone feels important, and I really have a good time rereading it. And I will be continuing with the other two books in the trilogy. I don't think I can commit to a full Shadowhunters universe reread, because I really enjoy Lady Midnight and those ones, but the actual Mortal Instruments series, dear lord, they're a lot to get through sometimes. Then I read one library book this month, and that was Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. I'm into mermaid books, I'm into underwater books, and this was a whole fun, fresh new take on mermaids, but it's more heavy on the science fiction side rather than the fantasy side. This is about a group of researchers on a boat, because many years ago an expedition went out to try and find mermaids, and they did, and everyone died. So a new expedition has gone out to again try and find mermaids and understand them a bit more and try not to die this time. And I really love this book's take on mermaids. It is a horror, thriller, sci-fi, and obviously fantasy because the mermaids are there, but they're a whole new take on mermaids where they don't feel like fantasy at all. They feel like, yeah, that's a creature that definitely exists and will keep me up at night. And I would kill for a screen adaptation of this series, and I would kill for more mermaid books. This almost in a very abstract, not correct sense at all, feels like in Our Wives Under the Sea, it kind of feels like what the wife's perspective would be when she went down in the submarine. And it was 500 pages long. But really love this book. This was my favourite book of the month. It was 4.5 stars. Loved it, loved it, loved it. We'll talk about it in detail at some point, hopefully before the end of the year. And now finally, we'll talk about the advanced copies that I read this month. And I'm going to try and pull up when they actually come out, because I think they come out a few months away. The first advanced copy I'm going to talk about, but the last one that I read, is Off Beasts by M. Jane Warmer. And this is a queer horror. They say novel. It's 120 pages long. It's more of a novella about a priest who falls in love with the Antichrist. And the entire description, it sounds fun, is quite detailed. But this is a description I didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars. No, I gave it 3 stars in a 2.5 kind of way. And now that I'm rereading the description, it doesn't make sense for what I actually read. Or unless I've somehow read the 120 page version of the book and there's a 400 page version coming out that I didn't know about. But it is about Dante, who is... he's probably like 18 in this, and you have Jude, who is a pastor who is an adult. He is 20-something. He's in a relationship with Jude. They're in like a secret, closeted gay relationship, because Jude's the pastor of a church in a small Texas town, and Dante is just this young boy who's in love with them. And Jude went away to learn to become a priest, and then he came back and whatever. They're in a relationship. They have like prophetic dreams, and they have these dreams night after night for so many times that eventually they somehow come to the conclusion that Dante is the Antichrist, who is being urged to start the apocalypse, and Jude has to stop him. And Dante does not want to start the apocalypse, and he's not gonna, but Jude is compelled to do what God tells him and kills the Antichrist. And there's a whole point where it's like, you are killing the love of your life. But they don't, in my opinion, that relationship's not clear on page. Like, why, you're like a 20-something priest. Why is the love of your life a 17, 18-year-old boy? And is it just because they're the only 2 gay people in this town? Maybe. A lot happens. The ending exists, but the description promises a lot more, in my opinion, than what carried out on page. And I will say, the opening line got me. Then let's go to my second favourite advanced copy of the month, which is They Fear Not Men in the Woods by Gretchen McNeil. I'll start with the positives, because again, I'm not planning on making a full dedicated video for this book. But this book was, the premise was promised to be a feminist eco-horror compared to Midsummer, the Florence Pugh film, which is beautiful, by the way. And the book did largely deliver on the promise. The author definitely understands how to set a scene, and the woods felt more like a character than a setting. And they were my favourite character by far, which is maybe a compliment. And the woods, they were very atmospheric and gory, and I wish that was the focus of the book's conflict rather than this interpersonal drama within the group. Because it's a group of teenagers, young adults, setting off to try and rediscover the place where one of the girl's father's body was found, or he disappeared, blah, 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 blah. And they are all, some of them are in the, tree logging business, some of them are tree, what's the word I'm looking for? They're activists. There's a lot of, similar to Into the Drowning Deep, all these people are very passionate about their cause, and you have the science elements tied in. This book was promised to be eco-horror. The eco-horror picked up in the second half of the book, so I became a little bit more engaged in the plot. I did make a comment at 94% of the way through the book, which said things were finally getting interesting. And the book was a little predictable and tropey, but I'm desperate for some positives here, because I really wanted to like this. But the negatives do far outweigh any positives that I enjoyed about this book. I found all the characters insufferable in ways that I couldn't even find enjoyable, especially the narrator Jen, and it was a struggle to get through her internal monologue. There's an entire plot about her and her married boss, or supervisor, which opens the book, but they became entirely irrelevant past those first few chapters. And she doesn't seem to have any interest whatsoever in the well-being of her friends, and she has complete tunnel vision when it comes to her getting what she wants. The pacing drags so much in the middle section of the book, to the point where it felt like I was walking alongside the characters in the woods on their multi-hour hike in real time. The horror elements appeared too late in the story to redeem any of my dislikes that came before, and much feels lackluster. There's a chapter where all the characters run for their lives from nothing. One character has magical healing powers, and Jen doesn't question it because the character is Finnish. and that's enough of a correlation for her. I wish I could have liked this book, or that the entire book had the same enjoyment as the final 10%. I don't remember if that book was a 2 or 2.5 stars, but I really wanted to like it. And the final advance copy book I read this month was The Curse of the Coal Woman by Marielle Thompson, and this is one that I generally did enjoy. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, probably like a 3.5, but I wasn't suffering when I read it. So Curse of the Coal Woman is this gothic story of magic, queer love, and mother-daughter relationships told in 3 interwoven timelines in the late 20th century. I picked up this book because it had a lighthouse on the cover. Above the other themes is a story of misogyny and how generations of families suffer abuse and trauma at the receiving end of witch allegations. And reviewing my Goodreads review now, a lot of it sounds very negative, but I did actually enjoy this book. I'm not usually the biggest fan of books that have 1, multiple perspectives, or 2 timelines that jump back and forth, and this one has both. The Coal Women's lives are similar, and the characters have enough shared traits that I struggled holding in my head what happened to who and the order of events throughout the interweaving timelines, but I can't imagine it being written any other way. I found Mabel's point of view to be the most developed and generally enjoyable of the 3. I was fond of her relationship with Evelyn, mostly, who is the one islander who seems to disbelieve in the curse, and I couldn't wait to return to her life. For me, something was missing, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. Maybe I expected something different from this book as a whole, more reason to believe the witchcraft allegations or understanding the significance of the lighthouse as their home. Maybe I needed to know more about how their treatment at the hands of the townsfolk affected their day-to-day lives and survival, especially as there are mentions of people refusing to interact and sell to them. Maybe some chapters felt repetitive when similar events occurred to each of the women. Maybe I was left unsatisfied at their fate and the fact that it wasn't my favourite of narrators who got to survive the curse. And perhaps I wanted a more defined understanding of whether there truly is a curse, or is it generational madness that drives the Coal Woman to the sea. The book is heavy on mental health and suicide, but doesn't commit to or unwind those themes as much as I would have expected, so those specific scenes lacked emotion for me despite their significance. But I did really enjoy this book. It's kind of, most of it in like a very quiet kind of way. It is these 3 women in more focus on the 2 rather than the 3rd, who's in like our current day timeline. More focused on the 2 women, Mabel and Rebecca, going about like their day-to-day lives on the island, the relationships they do manage to have with people who were desperate to discriminate against them. And is there really a curse? But yes, did really enjoy a lot of this book, despite my review sounding so negative. I might have to go back and add another paragraph. But let's see when these release dates actually are. So The Curse of the Coal Woman comes out December 2nd, 2025. So that is in 3 months' time. They Fear Not Men in the Woods by Gretchen McNeil comes out September 9th. So that will be maybe 4 or 5 days after uploading this video. Then finally, Of Beasts by MJ Wormer comes out in February 10th, 2026. I'm very ahead. I think I'm up to date on my advanced copy reading now, which is why I was so heavily reading them this month. But that is all the books I read in August this year. If you have any specifically recommendations on mermaidy deep sea books, kind of like, Into the Drowning Deep, I loved Our Eyes Under the Sea, and Deep Light by Frances Hardinge is also up there for me. If you have any recommendations for those, let me know because I need them. But thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!